Okay, so I just started the recording, and today I think we'll stick with the so from coming from last time we talked about design patterns, and we were able to cover a few design patterns available out there, especially with the what we call the um, singleton and the decorator pattern. So we were able to work on those two mainly. Now today I think we can go for um, another way of doing design patterns. So let me get back to the slides or the websites that we have been using, then we can start. So we talked one creational and one structural pattern, and I will take one observable pattern from behavior patterns. Okay, so let me show you guys what I'm talking here. So we looked about singleton, where we can create one single instance of each, and we worked on decorator pattern, where we can add more functionalities as we go without changing the base. Today I will be looking into one behavior pattern that is called the observable pattern. Okay, so with that I will not go to each and every design pattern that's out there. You can see it is a lot, but we will at least cover one from each main sections: creational, structural, and behavior, so we get an idea what kind of functionalities is out there and what sort of things that we will be able to do with these design patterns, at least from this perspective. Okay, so today we will look into the pattern what we call the observable pattern. Okay, so let's go through as the usual way. What is an observable pattern? What kind of thing it is trying to resolve? Okay, so observer is a behavioral design pattern that lets you to define subscription mechanisms to notify when multiple objects about any event that happens, the object they are observing. Okay, so you guys can see by looking at this picture, we can get a brief idea on what observable pattern is all about. So you guys can see in the middle, right around here, someone is performing some task in here. Is what we call the jiggling hands. One person is doing tricks with their hands using some balls, and there are people in here, who are keenly watching what he is doing, right? What is actually in this scenario, this this certain object is doing, right?
Excuse me, sir.
You guys can't see the screen.
No, sir.
Oh, my bad.
No, sir.
I think I have put the recording on, not the how about now?
Now, okay, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so as were talking, we have an person or some kind of thing is performing some actions in here, rolling the balls, and there are other things around here. Is watching. Okay, they are using binoculars, they are using telescopes, and whatsoever. Using these instrument, they keenly observe what's going on in here. Okay, and different people are looking at the changes that is happening. Okay, and sometimes in the observable patterns we have certain things that's going on, especially with the design, with this pattern. What we do is we look at these events, or we look at these actions that is going on. If that certain action is relevant to a person, or it is relevant to a subject of interest. The one who are watching, we call these ones as observers. Okay, what they are doing is observing. Okay, so what they're doing is observing at the changes that is happening in here. If the certain thing is interested to them, okay, what they will do is they will take that action into their account. Okay, say for instance, when a certain ball is moving, when a certain trick is performed, someone may be saying, okay, that is a great action that has happened, that is a wonderful act that is performed, I might clap. Okay, so certain people come here and clap on based on the action they have performed. So that is kind of a reaction to the actions what the observer is, the person who is doing. This person is I call it for simplicity for the person in here. This person is doing some tricks, and some actions may trigger some reaction on certain parties, not all. Okay, some might say, okay, that is a trick that I have seen earlier, it does not interest me. Okay, and there might be certain people who is looking at certain set of actions. Okay, this person is doing different actions. Say for instance, rolling the ball up, and someone might do a black flip, different kind of things. So if somebody might be interested on certain actions, maybe how many ball drops that he have done. Okay, one person is observing that, and another person might only look at certain section of the action performed. So observer might be doing, okay, when it is starting, I will start observing, and I will react on the last action that the person is performing. There are certain, what we call these things as filters, that is going on. So there can be various of things. Okay, so these things, what we call is the people who are interested in, those are called observers. Okay, what they are doing is observing. Okay, so or we call in terms of things like the observer, or we call these things as subscriptions as well. Okay, a person is subscribed to these events. Okay, so as long as they are observing or subscribe to this, they will find this event. But as soon as they look away, okay, now the person is not observing anything, they were like, they are no longer interested in these things, they do not need to be watched. So what they do is they can stop observing, or what we call is unsubscribe. Okay, when they unsubscribe, they no longer, the person who is doing these actions, he keep performing those things, but we are just not interested in these things. Okay, so that's kind of a thing, that's kind of mentality is behind the observer pattern. Remember these keywords. Okay, first one is observables. Okay, observables, and events, subscription, those kind of keywords will come in handy later on. Okay, take a mental picture of these acronyms. Okay, let's see the problem that is like the main approach that we are trying to go with these design patterns. What is the problem the design pattern is trying to resolve? So that's something that we need to be that we need to have on. Okay, let's see the problem. Imagine that you have two type of objects. Okay, we have two type of objects. One is called customer, the other one is called store. A customer is very interested in a particular brand of products, say a new model of iPhone, which would become available in the store really soon. Okay, The customer would visit the store every day to check productivity availability, but while the product is still on en route, most of these trip would be pointless, right? So what will happen is the store is having customers. A customer is interested in certain product, and the customer will always go to the store, and while it is still not available at the store, it might come in later on. So what will happen? The store owner, or sorry, the customer would have to go to the store and ask, is iPhone is available? Okay, so you know that's kind of the thing. If we are putting on a sign, okay, we are going to be going soon or something like that, what will happen is customers have interest, they would go and ask, is the iPhone is ready, or is the iPhone is available right now? Okay, that's kind of thing will occur when we go to the store frequently by a certain customer. Okay, so the next thing is the store. On the other hand, the store could send tons of email which might consider spam all the customers each time a new product becomes available. This would save some customers for endless trip in the store. At the same time, it would upset customers who are interested in this product. Yeah, you can see there are the other option would be the store owner would send emails to all the customers available there. Okay, who people might be interested in. Okay, those people find out, okay, this one is useful, but a person who is not interested in an iPhone, example myself, I would find that is frustrating, or it is unnecessary information for me. Okay, so what will happen is some customers will easily get okay, this is useless. Sometimes they might change their email, they might complain. So that's kind of things gonna happen. So while some people are benefiting from what is happening, some people might find this is useless. Okay, so it is what we call a conflict of interest. Either the customer want to check in the product availability, or store want to resource notify the wrong customers. So what is the solution that we can give? Okay, the subject that has interesting is often called a subject. Okay, so the object that has some interest in interesting state is often called a subject. Okay, this is one of the keywords that we find, but since also going to notify the other objects about the changing of this state, we call these things publishers. Okay, so so there is an interesting state. Okay, remember these keywords, remember these acronyms. So we have some interesting state. We normally call that, we don't call that state, we call that as a subject. Okay, as an interesting state. In this scenario, the arrival of new iPhone, that is an interesting state, right? The store did not have the iPhone earlier on, but they do now. So they have changed their state. It is a state of, it is a change in the store. So this interesting state, what we call is a subject. Okay, remember these terms in observable patterns, because these things come in handy. But since it is going to notify other objects about the changes in this state, we will call the publishers. Okay, so who's gonna do the changes, who's gonna notify the changes of this state, okay, is the task of a publisher. So there's thing called publishers who would say, okay, my job is to send out updates regarding these things. Okay, the state has changed. Now the publisher's responsibility is to say, okay, the state has changed. Okay, the subject has changed. All the objects that want to track the publisher's state are called subscribers. Okay, these are called subscribers. So people who are interested in these state changes are called subscribers. So we have three things. We have subject, we have the publisher, and we have the subscribers. Okay, so these are the key terms that you guys need to remember, and they are what do we call in there, right? Their basic use case in this scenario. Okay, the observer pattern suggests that you add a subscription mechanism to the publisher class, so individual objects can subscribe to or unsubscribe from the stream of event coming from the publisher. Fear not, everything is in complicated as it sounds. In reality, mechanism consists of one array of field sorting, list of reference to subjects, objects, and the several public methods which add, subscribe, remove from the list. Okay, so it is not that much complicated that is looks. Okay, so if you look at these things, the publisher and the mechanism behind it is, we have a publisher. Publisher is responsible for sending all the events, and the publisher have what we call a private array of subscribers who are interested in receiving notifications or state changes, who need to receive things. So we have a list, we have a public private list of subscribers, and there are two methods, two public methods. One is to add a subscriber, and the other one is to remove a subscriber. So this is kind of a way we can, if somebody is interested, we can use the add subscriber method. It will be added to the subscribers list, and if somebody is not interested in it anymore, we have the remove subscribers method, so they will be get removed from here. Okay, now whenever an important events happen to the publisher, it goes to all of the subscribers and call a specific notification method on their object. So the publisher has all the people who are interested, which we call the subscribers, and when a state change happen, the publisher's responsibility is, okay, there's a state change happening right now. What I need to do is to go and notify all of the subscribers regarding the state change. Okay, I'll send the state change for all the subscribers who are in here, so they will get notified. So that is kind of the basic idea behind that. Okay, real apps might have dozens of different subscribers classes that interested in tracking event at the same publisher class. You wouldn't want to couple the publishers to all of these classes. Besides, you might know about them beforehand. Publisher just by people. Okay, let's can skip that. Okay, so so that's why it is crucial all the subscriber implement the same interface, and the subscriber communicate with all them the interface. The interface should declare notification method along the parameters that publisher use to pass some contextual data of the notification. Okay, so whenever a subscriber comes in, okay, the subscriber comes in, how we gonna pass the information to the from this publisher to the subscriber is using a method which has to be implemented by all the subscribers. Okay, so all the subscribers have this method, and this method will have some implementation that would need to pass some parameters. So when the publisher want to send something, they basically do is they have a list of subscribers, and each of these subscribers have a common method which we call which we in this case we name this as update. Okay, when something happens, the publisher will collect all the subscribers. All these subscribers will have a common method called update. the subscriber, what it do is get the subscriber, call the update method. Next one, get the subscriber, call the update methods. List goes on. And so when we are calling that update method, when the subscriber is called by the update method, they want to say, sometimes the publisher would say, okay, I am calling update method, this is the change. Okay, they might need some extra information, what has happened. Okay, you can go to subscriber and say something has changed. Then the subscriber would definitely ask, okay, what has changed. Okay, rather than the subscriber is asking, the publisher can promptly say, okay guys, something has changed, that's why I am calling the update method, here's what have changed. Okay, so by going through that, by calling the update method and passing along the information, the subscribers knows, okay, something has changed, and here the parameters which it's containing is going to give us the information about the change that has happened. Okay, all right. If your app has several different types of publishers that you want to make your subscriber compile with all of them, you can go even further. All publishers follow the same interface. Interface would only need to describe the subscription methods. So this is like a edge scenario. That means if we have multiple publishers that we want to work with, we can have a publishers interface that which method to be subscribing. But let's see if it is coming. I will implement that. Otherwise, we will stick to the really simple publisher subscriber section. Okay, so you guys know the in real world we have these calls as email subscription, and we have paper subscription. I'm not sure in Sri Lanka that is the most case. Okay, we normally get our papers when we are going to the when we go to the shop, which they wrap around the goods and give us back. Other than that, I haven't personally got a single newsletter in my life, but there might be some interesting people. Anyhow, you guys might have seen other things in real life, such as when we are in YouTube, you guys might have seen what we call the subscribe buttons. Okay, so when you subscribe to a certain channel, you get the latest update as the content is updated, right? So that is kind of a real world use scenario in here. Okay, so let's look at the structure of the subscriber patterns. Okay, observable patterns in here. Sorry. So we have certain things that we have created so far. Okay, we will follow this class diagram and make one of the subscriber patterns available. Okay, so first thing is you guys can see we need to have the publisher. Okay, so the publisher have a section called a field called subscribers. Okay, and it is an array of subscribers. Okay, and we have one interface called subscriber. Okay, this is an interface, and since all the subscribers should have the update method, okay, we have this update public method within the interface. So whoever is who is implementing this interface should have this update method implemented on their concrete classes. Okay, so we have a concrete class in this scenario, a concrete subscriber. We can have it like whatever the name. So in here we have just called it concrete subscribers, and each and every concrete subscriber, they have to implement the update method with the context. Okay, and the concrete update is here. And when a client is coming, okay, when the client is registering with the subscriber method, all they have to do is create a new instance of the subscribe concrete subscriber. So they will create a concrete subscriber, and they have this publisher, which is this publisher that we have, and we have this subscribe method, and there is unsubscribe, notify, and manage. So what we have to do is we create a subscriber and we pushed it to the subscribers list, which is the publisher in this scenario. So we have a publisher, we can add the subscriber, which is created right now. So whenever the publisher get a notification, the publisher say we have this publisher and we want to notify something about this notify a stage change, we can simply call the notify subscribers. So which it will go looking all the subscribers between these publishers internal variable, which is called subscribers, and each and every subscriber has this unique update method. And what we can do is we will send the notification to the all the subscribers who are listening in. Okay, so notify subscribers, we can change this state. We will see how we can implement this, so you guys can get a better idea on this. So the main things, we have a publisher, we have a subscriber, we have a concrete class, and we have the context and everything. Okay, so this is going to be the basic that we will be working on. Okay, I just said the same thing that you will find in here. So let's look at the pseudocode. Okay, so in this example, the observer pattern lets the text editor object notify the other service objects are about to change in the state. So this is one of the examples that you will find in real life in order to get the observer pattern in work. Okay, so it is not in here. We will see the direct terms that we have used. Okay, but it is something similar. Okay, so you don't expect everything to be called publisher and something to call subscribers. These are meant to be illustrated. Okay, it's easy to map these things one to one, but not exactly the name should be that. Okay, so we have event manager. Okay, and event manager has things like listeners and subscribe, unsubscribe, and notify method. So basically the event manager is a publisher. You guys can see the subscribe, unsubscribe, and notify methods are in here. This is like the basic characteristic of the publisher that we have seen, and listeners are something equal to the subscribers. And we have an editor. Okay, so editor is like a third party class. So it has events, it has the editor method, open file method, save methods. So these are like the different events the editor will be firing upon. Okay, say for example, the event manager is an object within the editor itself. So anytime the editor is created, it might send event to the event manager. Let's see how this goes. And you guys can see the event listeners. Okay, these are the event listeners. So these are technically the subscriber interface that we have talked about. So it has the update method alongside the file name. Okay, that might be something that we need to work with. And there are two concrete classes, concrete implementation of this event listener. One is the email alert listener, the other one is the logging listener. Okay, so both of these methods will have the function called update, because the event listeners that we have in here has that method. So we have the update method, and the context that we are passing is going to be the file name. Okay, so remember the basic things. We have the publisher, the subscriber, and the concrete implementation of the subscriber, and an editor in this scenario who's going to be sending out the event managers to us. Okay, all right. Unsubscribe. This is the event manager. This is the editor. Okay, event listener, logging listener. What we'll do is we will implement something similar, then we get a better idea on what we are dealing with in here. Okay, give me a second. I'll open the same project that we have been using throughout the course. Do I have Docker running? I think not. I should have Docker running, although I don't need, might be able to. And xserve bloom soup. Okay, let me look at localhost 4200. 4200. Okay, so this is one of the smaller versions of smaller things that we have been developing, the front end. What I'll do is I will open the project in VS Code so you guys can see the code as well. So most of the time we worked with the API section, which is gonna be like the backend application, and there is one front-end application. By the way, how many of you guys have worked with front-end frameworks? Anyone have worked with a front-end framework beforehand? I have worked with some front-end frameworks, something like that. You can write. I'm not sure whether we have raised your hand option in here, or you can just type in the chat so I can see. Anyone have worked with something like React or something similar? Nobody? Okay. Okay, that's actually fine. Let me double check. Okay, quite a few people were nice. Okay, that's good. So in this scenario, I'm not gonna take into developing everything in what we call a front-end framework. Rather than, I would just simply go with what we have in here. Let me double check. Okay. So if you are interested in, guys, I will link up a tutorial that we talked about setting up a very simple application. Okay, Right now I am not gonna go through the the application creation and everything. Just I assume that I'll just give a brief introduction. So in here I'm using Angular as a framework. So I have this home component. Okay, you do not think the UI that you are currently seeing is this component. We call this home component. So the home component have a view, the HTML file, and a styling, which is the CSS file, and the spec is like the testing section, and we have the component which is gonna handle all our logics behind that. Okay, so the HTML and the component is like the interested parties in this scenario. So we have this HTML that can perform some actions. Once the action is performed, we can execute those performed action in here. For example, I'll take the same example that we had in here. So we have this event manager, the editor. I will have these open file and save files as two methods or two button methods that we can interact with. I'll show you guys how we can create that and create this event manager by our hand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a button. Okay, a perfect or normal button. I will call this one open, the other one is save. Okay, so we have two buttons which is having the text open and save. Let me go and see validate. Yes, so I have one button called open, one button called save. Okay, so I can this is also an observable pattern, by the way. I can say when I click on this button, I will trigger on open method. Okay, so when I click on this button, I will call the on open method, right? And when I click on save, I will call on save method. Okay, so I have two methods, which one is called on open, the other one is on save. All those kind of things happen when I click on the open button, when I click on the save button. So where these methods going to be implemented, that is going to be implemented in the home component. Okay, so I have the home component on open method and on save method. Okay, so I have created these two methods on open and on save. So I can see whether these things are working. I'll just say console log and I'll say on open, and same goes. I will copy this code and say on save, which I need to put in the brackets. Okay, so I have one method called on open. So once it is called, when the method is called, it will just console log on open, and if I call on save, it will console log on save. Okay, simple enough. When I click this open button, it will execute this method. If I click on save button, if I click save button, it will call on save method and it will just show on save. Okay, so I need to go to the inspect element to see these things in action, where I have the console right beside me. Okay, I'll clear this out. If I click open, on open method is clear. If I hit save, on save method is called. Simple enough. Any questions from this? I mean, apart from the I just totally skipped on creating, but simple enough. It is not that huge of a thing. We just have two buttons which will either print on open or on save. Any questions that I need to clarify on this section? Anything in your mind that I need to speak up? Okay. If you have anything, just ping me. Okay. So right now, what we do is we will create the editor. Think this is the editor itself. We have open and save. So basically we have created the editor, but we haven't created the event manager. Okay, we will create the event manager, and we will call the event managers, listener methods, and everything. Okay, so in the same file, to keep everything in simple forms, I will create another class called event manager. Class event manager. Okay, I have class called event manager. So let's take the home component as the editor, and within that you guys can see there is this events instance called event manager. I'll have that in the home component because we have the open file, save file in the same class. So I will have the events manager in here named as event manager. Okay, so I need to instantiate new event manager. So I have event manager. For now, just think this home component as the editor. Okay, so we have this event publics field. We have the open file, we have the save file, and we have the constructor, which we'll just ignore. So the home component have the same functionality as the editor. Now we have the event manager. Yes, we have event manager class on the bottom. What does event manager has? So it has a private listeners. Okay, and we have subscribe, unsubscribe, and notify public methods. Okay, so subscribe, they have event type and a listener, and unsubscribe, they have event type and a listener. Okay, good. And we have a notify and event type and what is the data that we want to notify. Okay, let's create this one first, the event manager, then we will get an idea. Okay, all right. Sorry, rather than that, I will create the event listeners. Okay, so then the listener type is no. So we have an interface called event listeners, which will have update file name. Let's take that into action. It's not a class, it's an interface. Event listener. Okay, normally we can say event listener. Okay, this is the interface that we have created, listeners. I will follow this exact name. So it is an interface which has a public method called update with file name. Okay, a public method called update, and it has the file name, and it will ask for string. Update lack of return implicit any. Okay, so I have to define the return type. In this scenario, I will just say void. There is nothing in here. So I don't need this update. By default it is public. Okay, we have the interface which is called update, and it is having the file name as the context parameter. That is the data that the event listeners gonna get. For simplicity, I will call just event listener, even though it says event listeners. Okay, and there are two implementations of that, the email alert listener and logging listener. Right now I am not gonna implement these two. I'll first implement the event manager. So what do we have in event manager? We have a private listeners, subscribe, unsubscribe, and notify method. So we have private listeners. What is the type of the listeners? Okay, the listeners are gonna be in type of event listeners. Okay, event listener. So that's what I'm gonna say. There will be an event listener, and it's gonna be an array, because all the subscribers that is gonna happening, it's gonna go in here. You guys can, if you guys can remember once again, in the publisher we have subscribers, it's the type of the subscriber which is the interface, and since they are going to be more, we have the array annotation. Even though it is not in here, what we have in here now, we have the event manager and a private variable called listeners, which will hold a list of event listeners. Okay, initially it's going to be empty. Then we have a few methods, subscribe. Okay, in the subscribe method we take the event type and a listener. Okay, I will say event type, let me think that is a simple string, and a list listener, which is gonna be an event listener of type, because when we call the subscribe method, what we're gonna basically do is add this listener to this event listener arrays, or this listeners array. Okay, so in order to add listeners, the listener array's shape, or it is going to accept only the type of event listeners. So the one that we're going to be adding into this array is going to be the same as the array's shape. Okay, so we can't say for instance this listener is an apple and we have a basket of apples. Okay, we have a basket of apples. So when we are adding an apple to apple basket, that is accepted. But if this is an orange basket, we can't add an orange to an apple basket. Okay, that is not accepted. Of course, in physical world we can. Okay, but if we are collecting only apples, make sure we put only apples. Okay, so when someone is subscribing, what will happen? The listeners should be listener array should be initialized, or we can say listener dot push the listener. Okay, so we basically what we are doing is when we add a listener.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, code pane.
Oh, you guys can't see the code. All right, now you guys are telling me. Sorry about that. I hope you guys can see now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. So we have this HTML. Okay, we have this HTML which is like the view, and we have the component which is like the execution part. Okay, so in HTML I have two buttons. One it is called open, the other one is called save. Okay, so that is what we can see in here in the URL. I think you guys have seen the two buttons. Let me stop present and share the entire screen. That might help. Entire screen number 2. Okay, hopefully now you guys can see. Okay, so in here we have this open button and we have this save button. So what it's on open, it is going to say on open, on save it's going to say on save. Okay, so within the code itself we have this button which will call the on open method. In save we have on save method. So these two functions are going to be implemented in this OM component section, which is not the use case in here. We will just have two methods or two event listeners that will gonna do this for us. So we have the event manager class that we have created, and we have the editor class which is gonna have the event manager instance in here. Okay, so we have an event manager, If you look at the event manager have a list of listeners. Okay, in here we have listeners, and it is going to be type of event listener, which is the interface that we have created in here. So as I mentioned earlier, every subscriber, every listener should have a public method that we need to implement, which is going to be, in this case, the update method. Okay, and while we are updating, we are calling the file name in here. Okay, so when we have subscribers, we have this event type. I'm not sure what's the use case for right now, but for sure when we take in when we're trying to subscribe to something, okay, we have this listener going in here, and whenever a new listener is added, we will put that listener in here. Okay, that is the basic functionality. Okay, and we have the unsubscribe method, unsubscribe, and we can say the event type and the listener that we want to remove. So if you guys take a closer look at in here, the unsubscribe, the event that they want to unsubscribe, and the listener that is going to do the unsubscription. Let me check. Okay, so one thing that the one thing that we have done in here is, rather than pushing these things into an array, okay, the listeners will be in a map. Okay, that is a good way to do, because that's where the event type is used. Okay, that is also, we'll implement that. So it's gonna be a map rather than an array. I will call this string and the event listener. So basically what it does, it is gonna create a dictionary like. So rather than keeping everything in an array, we will keep this in a map. So map has a unique feature. The map has key and a value. Okay, map has a key and a value. So what we will do in here, we will have a key, which is going to be the event type, and we will have the listeners that is going to be going back. So we can have one listener, but since it might be more than one listener, we will keep the event as an array. For this in here, I will put a new map instance, and initially there won't be anything. Right now there is no push method because this is a map. So map have this method called add listeners. Sorry, in here set. So what is the thing that we need? First thing is the key. Okay, what is the key, and what are the values that we are interested in? Okay, let me check. Type and listeners. Okay, so we need to set. So the event type is there, but the problem is I can't put a one single listener in here. Okay, when I am adding this, what I need to do is I need to get the existing listeners. So how do I can get that? Can call the listeners get event type. So what I am doing at the first section is, rather than the event listeners to be an array, okay, so the map contains the event type. Let's say it is an open event or a save event. Okay, those are the two events that we are interested in. And who are the event listeners that is going to be in this scenario? Is going to be an event listener. So when the listeners dot get and we pass the event type, what will happen is we can get all the listeners on a certain type. So you guys can see that is the beauty of a map. Okay, we have a key, we have a value. In this scenario, the values are a list of event listeners. So if I call listeners dot get and pass the key, what is the key currently that who are in here is gonna be the existing users. Okay, and when we create these existing users, we will get all the existing arrays. But sometimes you guys know in the initial state the existing users length will be 0. Okay, for initial purpose, initial call, the existing length will be 0. So in that scenario we need to create an array, otherwise it won't work for the first element. Okay, we will see what does this do. So we get all the listeners given by a particular key. Okay, sometimes if it is the first call, the length is 0, and in that scenario we will create the existing array, and we will push the if it is the length is 0, that if it is length is not 0, that means the listeners are already there, it is initialized, so second time we don't need to do. So existing dot push, and what I'm going to push is the listener that we are interested in, and the listeners section in here I will just put I'll put the value as the existing one. Okay, and I think I can get if I call the get method, then it is going to be undefined. So okay, then I think I can check the undefined ability rather than the length. If existing equals undefined, then this will happen. Okay, so what will happen when a subscriber is adding, the subscriber will be subscribed to certain events and the event listener is passed on. So in this scenario what we'll do is we will check the listeners.get method, which will return all the values to a given key. In this scenario the key is going to be event type. So we will take all the existing ones, and for the first time the existing would be undefined, that means there would be no listeners for the first time. Okay, so in that scenario what we will do is we will initiate the array to an empty array. That means okay, if there are nobody is there, we will just create an empty one. So then again we can add the existing one to the push method. Okay, so we will push the first user. If it is the second time, then this will be false, and the existing the listener that we want to add to the subscriber list will be pushed, and all those things will be set in the map. Okay, so first we get and second we set. So by using this mechanism we can set the subscribers. Okay, so we have the unsubscribe method, which I will let you guys to do. Okay, since I'm gonna do only unsubscription method, take your time and do the unsubscription part. What should happen when a person is unsubscribing? Okay, bring your creativity and work on this. And the next thing is notify. So we need to notify everyone what is happening. So if you look at the notify, we have to go to all the listeners of a given type and call the listeners update method. Okay, so notify, when we are notifying we need to give data. Okay, I'll just simply say the notification is going to be a simple string, that's it. So when we are notifying, okay, we need to notify all the event listeners. Okay, if it is a certain event type, then we have to pass the event type as well. So we're gonna notify. Okay, the open method is gonna be notify to all the subscribers who are in that. So we need to get the all the subscribers to a certain event. Okay, we don't need all the listeners, we need all the listeners for a certain time. So what we can do is we can get all the existing subscribers to this. Okay, const existing. So and then again if we try to notify an empty one, then the existing will be throw an error. So we need to check. So we will say notify all, but there are no notifiers. It is not defined yet. We haven't any subscribers. That's kind of thing. Okay. In a scenario like that, what we'll do is we can either show an error. In this scenario, I will just create an empty array, or we can simply show an error. It's up to the implementation, but in a nutshell, we need to take all the existing listeners. Okay, so when we call the listeners dot get and pass the event type, we get all the existing listeners. Okay, and I'm gonna do is check the nullability. I can just say const, and all the existing ones are in here is gonna be existing ones. That means it is already there. And I can call for each method, and I will call each listener with the letter L. Okay, so I will just simply console log the L right now and explain. So the first thing that we're going to be checking, first thing that we're going to do, we take all the listeners, okay, using the map. Okay, the listeners is a map. We can get all the listeners by calling the get method and passing the key. In here, the set key that we have used is the event type, and the get key is going to be the same thing. So we will take all the listeners, call these things as existing, and existing is not undefined. That means there are existing listeners within here. What I will do is loop through each of these existing listeners. Okay, and while I am doing that, I will call the single listener. Since this is an array, you guys can see it is an array of listeners, and while I am looping, I am saying one listener to be named as L. You can call listener or whatever. I'll just call L for simplicity, and you guys can remember this is a type of event listeners. Okay, this is going to be a type of event listeners. So when we are talking about event listeners, okay, you guys can see all the event listeners have a method called update. Yes, you have a method called update. So if I click L.update, I can pass the data. It is expecting the data, which is going to be file name. In here, I will just have the file name as same, so we won't get confusion. So there you go. So what we are doing is, when the notify is called with the event type and the file name that we want to notify, all the users will get this file name notification by simply going through the array and sending that message. Okay, so basically we have implemented the notify method as well. So we have added the subscribe method, we have the event listener as well. Okay, next thing that we need to do is we need to implement the concrete event listeners. So we have the event manager, but we need to subscribe. We need to add subscribers. We need to subscribe to these things. So when we do that, how we gonna do? Okay. So any questions up until this, guys? Okay, great. So next thing that we need to do is create two concrete implementation of these event listeners. Okay, as per the documentation, I think we have what we called is a new event manager. Okay, event listener we have created. So we have a login listener and an email listener. So I will create those two classes. Okay, and okay, so we have we should have a class login listener implements event listener. event listener. Okay, so as soon as the login listener list, okay, we have to implement the interface, which is the update method, because this is an interface. Every function within the interface we should implement in the class. Okay, so I'll just simply say console log login listener. Okay, login listener, I will just simply print the file name. Okay, whenever we do login, we might need to do something else, but in here for simplicity I will just say the name and the file name that we are interested in. So the login listener, then we have email listener. Okay, so I'm going to simply have the same thing. So we have an email listener. Okay, it should implement the update method, since it is implementing the event listener interface. So we have an update method. So we have the update listener event listener mechanism in here. So we can send an email on that event happen. The login listener also have the same thing. So we have two listeners. Okay, so these two is gonna be listening to changes or the events that is gonna happen in the event manager. Okay, the event manager. So we have the event manager in here. Now what we need to do is we need to register, or we need to make sure the login listener and the email listeners are created and they are subscribed to the events that we are interested in. Okay, so in the editor itself I will create a constructor. Okay, and I will create a login listener and an event listener instance. So I will have const log. I'll simply call the logger and new login listener. Okay, so I have a login listener that I am interested in. Then I have a const emailer new login listener. Sorry, not a login listener, but an email listener. So I have two listeners in place. But are they subscribed to anything? No, they are just declared. We have two different listeners. They are just declared. Okay, so we need to think, the next thing is, who is gonna listen to what? Okay, the logger is gonna listen to all the open methods and the save methods. Okay, the open method is gonna be sending emails. Okay, so we have two methods and two subscribers. One is eager to log, the other one is eager to send emails. Okay, so on open, a logging will be also interested in that information, as emailer is also going to be interested in that message. But for save, only logger will be interested in each and every time when we save. We don't need an email to be going on. Okay, the email listener is interested in only on open events. Okay, the logger, however, the logger is interested in both on open methods and on save methods. So what we need to do is we need to say the event manager to get the registration. Okay, now event manager is there, we can send the events. So on open, what I will say, I have the events. Rather than calling events, I will call these as event manager. So make more sense. Manager. Okay. So when open happens, I will have to notify what is the event type. I will call this as open, and when I am opening, I should say what is the file name. Okay, file name. I will call this as simple.txt. Okay, so whenever whenever somebody is calling on open method, the event manager will be notified with the command open or the event type as open. What has open in here, I will just say simple text. Okay, and in the on save method, it's going to be the same. Okay, the event manager will notify. This is not going to be any open event, but is an save event. What the event is called is save. So whenever a notification is sent to the save, the file name would be this. Okay, so we have two events. One is called open, the other one is called save, and the data that they are sending is just this simple text. Sorry. So whenever the open method is performed, when open method is performed, the event manager will notify. The event manager will fire a notify method. If you guys can see, the event manager has a notify method in here. Okay, so for a given type, if there are existing listeners, for all of these existing listeners, the update method will be called. Okay, so we have the event listener interface in here. So there is an update method. Okay, since all the listeners, the log listener and the email listener is listening into is implementing the update method, whenever the update method is called, they are sending this function, whatever the data that it needs in this scenario, the file name. Okay, so the notify method is here and the email listener is here. Now even though we try to run this, it would not do anything, right? We do not see the event manager is not doing anything of such sort. So why is that? Okay, so we call the notify method. Yes, the notify method will go all the existing listeners and it will show. So for fun, I will just console log event type, and it's going to be event type, and I will show the next line console.log listeners. How many listeners are there? So I can say existing dot length. That means for this particular event, how many listeners have been registered, how many of them are subscribed. Okay, let me go back to the app. If I say open, the event type is open. How many listeners? It is undefined, so there are no listeners in here. If I say save, same goes. Event type is save. How many listeners? Undefined amount of listeners. So that means even though we fire these things, there are no people interested in listening to them. There is no one is interested in listening in. So how can we add listeners? How can we add listeners to these events? Okay, so we have two listeners. Of course, we have created a logger listener and an email listener, but we haven't subscribed. This event manager has not called the subscribe method to either of. So I can call simply events manager dot subscribe. I will be interested in open events. The open event will be subscribed by the logger. Okay, that means whenever we open, whenever the open method is fired, okay, somebody fire open method, the logger will be interested in listening to that. Okay, we are subscribing to that. Okay, and the same goes if I fire the save method, the logger will be interested in. The logger is interested in two events. One is the open method, the other one is the save method. So both of these methods are interested in the logger listener. Okay, so the email listener, as we mentioned earlier, email listener is not keen on saves, but it is interested in what we call the open methods. So what we call the event manager subscribe open events. Who is interested in the open events? In this scenario, email. Event manager subscribe to open events. Who is interested? The login listener is interested in. Same goes to save in here. Okay, so now we have two subscribers, actually three subscribers added to two different methods. Okay, the open method and the save method. So the open method has two listeners, two subscribers, the logger and the emailer, but for save method only logger is available. Okay, so we have the editor in place, loggers are in place, and everything will work. So let's open. So in the open, you guys can say event type is open. How many listeners? There are two listeners. The login listener is printing out the update method. The email listener also logging out the same thing. But if I say save, you guys can see the event type is save. There is only one listener, and that is the login listener that is showing in here. Okay, so you guys can see we can have listeners coming in, and those guys will be listening to those changes. Okay, now let's create another listener in here. So you guys can see we have a logger listener and an email listener. I will create another log listener, which I will call logger 2, new login listener. Okay, now we have another subscriber. Okay, the subscriber in this scenario is called logger 1. Okay, the logger 1 is keenly interested in save methods only. It's not gonna go on on open method. The logger 1 is only interested in save methods. So what I will do is I will group these by type. So these are like open listeners, these are the save listeners. Okay, so we have two type of listeners. So we have the event manager save. Right now it is it will subscribe by logger 1. Okay, so we have two listeners for open, two listeners for save, and the save one have a interesting thing. There will be two logger listeners, logger and logger 1, and for email or the open event we have logger listener as well as the email listener. Okay, so we can go on and on with this. I have a logger 2. The logger 2 is interested in open logger 2. Okay, so you guys can clearly see we have three listeners of type open who are listening, the logger 1 or logger, emailer, and logger 2. So anything happens when the open event is fired, these three subscribers will get a notification. And there is the save method. There are two loggers who are interested in the logger and logger 1. So these two loggers will be interested in the save methods. Okay, so if I go back to the app and hit open, you guys can see event type is open, and there are three listeners: the login listener, the email listener, and the second login listener. If I say save, there will be two listeners, and login listener is the one that is interested in. You guys can see number 2 in here. That means the same message has printed twice. That's why it is showing two. That says the login message listener. This text was printed in the console for 2 times. Okay, that conclude the 2 listeners that we have. Okay, so you guys can see the same goes to how much subscribers we add. We can have many as we like. Okay, so make sure the other important thing here, when you subscribe to something in here, let me go back. So within the construction we have the subscribe method. Okay, we have the subscribe method, but in the constructor side we have subscribe to this. But remember, when we are done with the subscription, when we find that there is no use of subscribing to this, you have to call the unsubscriber on deconstruct. That means once when we start the component, that is the indication of the constructor, we start listening in. After everything is done, when we no longer need this subscription to happen, we need to unsubscribe. Otherwise what will happen, it will create memory leaks. Okay, we have subscribed to some events and we did not completely destroy that section. That code, that listener would be listening throughout the application, and if you forgot that, it will create lot of memory leaks. Okay, so once you are done with it, you have to unsubscribe. In here, the unsubscribe method that I mentioned in here, so you guys need to implement that. If I have a button in here, say unsubscribe all the people, all the subscribers within the given event type should unsubscribe everything. That means everyone who is listening to the subscription should not get any notification afterwards, since they have unsubscribe from the events that they are interested in. Okay, so this is try it your own phase. It might take a little bit time to you guys to understand the subscriber pattern, but remember, when you are developing applications, the subscriber pattern is one of the most used patterns that you will ever see. Okay, so subscriber pattern is one of the most used patterns. Observer pattern is one of the most used pattern in our application development, with either it is web, mobile, whatever. Subscription is one of the most common patterns. So how often that you use, say for instance, the events that you do daily, those are most of the time subscriber based. Okay, so let me give you an example. You have a lot of buttons, right? You have a lot of open buttons in your taskbar, in your programs, whatever. Okay, so each time we can't accept the button to check on the system the functionality that they are performing. Okay, that is not how it works. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go again. So the button clicks that you do every day are in use case of what we call observables. Okay, every time when you click on it, observer get notified, then we get the call back, okay, somebody has clicked on this button. That is the observable pattern in real life. So either knowingly, unknowingly, you guys use observers in most of your times. Okay, so These are like the observable patterns, how we can implement these observable patterns. This is from scratch. Okay, from scratch, how we can create an observer like the event manager, and how we gonna do the subscription, how we gonna notify the subscribers, and how we gonna create the notifiers and subjects and everything. So these are the subjects. Okay, this open is a subject of state changes. Okay, the application initially had not the open state. Now when we not when we click on the on open button, it is firing state change. Okay, open from close or whatever the initial state, we are converting it to a open state. Okay, when we click on the save button, we are converting it from open state to a save state. So that's kind of state changes happen. So anything that you see in here, the save or open, those are what we call subjects. Okay, the event manager who is sending these things. Okay, so the notify is the notify function send out the message, hence the event manager is what we call a publisher. Okay, they publish events. So the subscriber in this in this scenario, we have subscribers. The logger is a subscriber. Okay, the logger is interested in different state changes, that different things published by the publisher. So you can shape the things as of your willing. You guys can listen into subscribe to open events, save events. If you have another event, you guys can create those things and go on. So this is like a nutshell of observer pattern that you will use day to day. Any questions up until this, guys? The subscriber pattern. So remember, most of the programming languages, most of the frameworks that we are using, you do not need to create the event stores and listeners, all those kind of things. Okay, you do not need to implement those things by scratch. Okay, there are already implemented things. Which you will do is like something like this. Okay, so we have the login, listen, and all those kind of things. What you need to do is, what will happen a certain event is fired. That is what most of the programmers do. So say for instance, a button is clicked. Okay, a click listener is there. Okay, you can put a click listener. So whoever comes in and he click on the button, a click listener is fired. All you have to do is we have to register a click listener, or we need to subscribe the click listener like this. Okay, and once the click listener is fired, the update method will get all the information that we need based on the data what we should do. Okay, that is most of the time a programmer's choice. So in here we have seen how the observer will behave and what is the motivation behind this kind of behavior. So it will be easy for you guys to understand the subscriber pattern and what should happen. Okay, so if you guys go to development like JavaScript, on click is one of the event listeners that you will find. On drag, okay, so what will happen if you drag? If you long press, there are a lot of events that evolve in the machines. And there are things in Android on click listener, on tap listeners. Okay, so all these listeners are basically observables. Okay, they are awaiting on some events are firing. In this scenario, log listener. Okay, we are listening into log listeners whenever some event is happening. Okay, we have the control of what to subscribe in here. You guys can see it is only what to subscribe in here. If you like this if you interested in subscription, and you can make the context data like this, the context data that we are getting, we take that and we can print, send, whatever we like, we can do that in here. Okay, so that is the mental behind the observer pattern. Let's go and see. The implementation is the applicability. So observe patterns: when change the state, one object may require to change in the objects and the actual set of judgment behave beforehand or change it dynamically. So these are like the use case of object observability pattern. Okay, so changing in state, that is one. Okay, you guys read along the detailed version. So other thing is based on the observability, some other behaviors might change. Okay, so for example, um, based on an action, another observer might do, or another object would react in different ways. Okay, so for in email section, right around in here, the email listener. Okay, so the email listener can react to the action, the open and send an email. Okay, so based on the interaction that happened, based on the event that is fired, a certain listener would have different use cases. In here, the email listener will send an email, the log listener would just simply log out. Maybe we can have an SMS listener, so the SMS listener would send an SMS. Likewise, the behavior of another one influence another's actions. Okay, that can be sometimes a chains of action. Okay, so email listener might in a scenario, think like email listener have another event listener put in, not like this event listener. Okay, something like email based listeners, they can notify other places. Okay, we got an open event. Now you fire up another event. Okay, the chain of observability, chain of actions could be triggered if you're using the event manager. So the implementation, remember this implementation, we implemented this by using certain steps. So please remember those important steps, and we'll come to pros and cons. Okay, what are the pros of the subscriber pattern and what are the cons? Okay, so let's talk about pros. Open close principle, you have introduced new subscribe to the class without having to change the publisher's code, and vice versa if there is publisher's interface. And you guys can see that the open close principle in here. So when we are talking about the open close principle, we think in a scenario like when we do a change, we do not do drastic change on the publisher. So if you want to introduce something, if the publisher want to interact with a new thing, in here the subjects, all you have to do is call the subscriber method, and the subscriber method will call the notifier. Minimal amount of changes in the publisher. Okay, so that's kind of one of the implementation benefits, and it does not violate the open close principle. And the next thing is you can establish relationship between objects at runtime. Okay, so that means if you guys can remember, if you want a relationship, okay, if you want a relationship with something else, you have to use the new keyword and create the event manager and have the event manager in here. So this is a code, right? We have introduced this event manager by writing a code, but a subscriber that we have seen in here by having this subscriber, of course we have hard coded it, but without an issue we can add more subscribers at runtime. So the connection between these event manager and home component is not done at the compile time, sorry, but it is done at the runtime. Whenever a new subscriber comes in, whenever a new subscriber take in place, such as this logger 2 or something like that, we can automate that in at runtime. So the connectivity between the logger and event manager is dynamic. Okay, you don't have to hard code those things in the code. So that is also a pro. The cons is subscribers are notified in random orders. This is somewhat true because in our scenario we do not have like order in position, but there is an order because if you look at the event subscriber open, the 3 events that is happening, they have actually order. First one is the logger, second one is the emailer, third one is the logger 2. So when we are notifying, okay, when we are sending an update, the order is always going to be since it is pushing from 0 to end of elements, it's gonna call the logger first, email second, and the logger 2 next. Same goes to the save instance as well. So those things will be called in order. Okay, but sometimes when we are looking at sometimes when the heap is huge, when there are a lot of subscribers mentioned, sometimes the subscription order might change. So that will affect some of the functionalities. Say for instance, we need the we need the save event to happen only after open one. Okay, if there are like lot of open events firing away right now, the save method might be delayed. So that's kind of thing would be algorithmic wise will jeopardize the logic. Okay, that is a disadvantage in this scenario. So you guys can see other relationship between the patterns, especially chain of responsibility, command and mediator pattern have some concepts in terms of observability. Okay, I'll let you guys to learn about the observables and pros and cons in as per this documentation, which is really helpful. I think compared to other two, even observable pattern is quite interesting to learn and quite intuitive most of the time, 99% of the time. When we are coding, when we are doing any code of work with our computer, most of the time we work with this pattern, okay, the observable pattern. So that is a use case almost every day that we use. So make sure you guys understand the observable pattern and its use case. All right. Anyone have any questions on the observable pattern and its use case? Observable patterns and its use case. Okay. So most of the time when And we are working with front-end frameworks such as Angular and React. The reactiveness, the observable pattern is almost every time is used. Okay, so make sure you guys learn about observability, how we can use that, how we can leverage that. That's kind of thing is when you see it, you might not see, okay, this is an observable, but when you have learned observables and when you see it in action, there is a different reaction. Okay, this is an observable that we are talking about. That kind of feeling is coming when you know the theory and learn the code. Sometimes you might have just coded it, okay, no knowingly, unknowingly, this is an observable. But now, since you guys know, it will change the way you look at code. It will have a bright understanding or more fundamental understanding of what's going on in world of computers or world of observables. So notable mention in here, the streaming libraries out there like RxJS heavily use on these observables. Okay, make sure to check those things out. Observability, how they are handled, how the subscription has happened, or what we do in today. What we have is we have created these subscribers, publishers, and everything by ourselves, right? All the libraries like RxJS, they provide these out of box. Okay, you do not have to worry about subscribers, adding subscribers, and everything. They will manage that kind of thing. So you don't have to worry about huge about those things. Okay. Anything else, guys, that we need to discuss? Okay, I think I can stop recording.